All right, welcome back. Harmless Dave over here on the Real Media Observer, formerly known as the Radical Independent and a few other names. I always have people saying to me, hey, bring back, I've changed the name too many times, but I am listening to people because the Radical Independent had a much better ring to it. And if I change it again, it's so ridiculous at this point. But I appreciate people who are still recognizing me as the Radical Independent, as well as the RMO and Harmless Dave and all these different things. But I will just stay the course for now, right? Until I decide not to. Here's a story that the mainstream media talked about a few days ago, the legacy media. And the way they framed this was, hey, Putin's Russian stooges are saying things like they want to take Alaska back over the sanctions. Now, do I think that Russia would actually do that? No, I don't. But here's the problem with the way the West interprets all the information that Russia puts out. They do it through this lens that really sort of belittles it or makes it sound like they're really not serious. They were really serious about going to war in Ukraine. And if you look back through, the timeline, you'll see that, okay, Russia says, please stop doing this. Please, pull NATO back. Let's rein in this whole idea that Russia is going to be surrounded by a bunch of NATO allies who are essentially spying on Russia or encroaching on their sovereign territory. And again, we put out the example that imagine if Russia sent troops to Mexico, right? And said, hey, Mexico, we're going to help with your security here, right? We're going to build some biolabs here in Mexico to help you with the next, outbreak. And the Mexicans are like, sure, why not? I think people here in the United States would go bonkers. Or the same thing if Russia decided to align with Canada, right? Or, any other country that's not that far away. Say Russia decided to set up an outpost, say, on Greenland, right? Greenland, however you want to say it. Isn't it Norway that is in charge of Greenland? I don't even know. But the bottom line is Russia could make an alliance somewhere, and the national security apparatus here in the United States would go absolutely crazy, right? And with some legitimacy to that craziness, because you don't want other countries setting up shop, even though technically China has been setting up shop here in the United States for decades. And nobody seems to really care about that because they're not looking at it through the right perspective. They're looking at it as a partnership, as a, we have to put up with what China does to their own people in order to get the benefit of super low cost slave-made goods. And the United States has made that bargain. And no matter who's in the White House, Republican, Democrat, they just, China, it's great. See, Russia, what they've done during the sanctions is they've decided to start making their own stuff. And they even have a new trade route they set up where they're going to be sending goods and services down to India, a direct route, and it's going to save them money. And India is one of those countries that's an emerging first world country. You might say it's a second or third world country, but they're emerging as a real force on the global scene. And the United States dropping the ball all over the place by aligning itself with these NATO countries. And the NATO countries obviously are going to be missing out on all of the stuff that they need for their survival. So this was really well thought out by the Russians. So they can make statements like, hey, I think we ought to take Alaska back because the sanctions have caused us lots of damage and problems. The truth is that Russia is bouncing back in a big way. after the sanctions. And this is nothing but sort of bluster, almost like to try to goad the United States into going, off the deep end and, sending troops up to Alaska, which who knows, we may have sent a bunch of troops up there to defend Alaska. And see, this is what happens when you don't take your adversaries seriously. And I think the United States completely, as George W. Bush used to say, underestimated their competition. I'm trying to remember what Bush used to say, and it was like dismiss. It's like the whole, adding prefixes to words that don't need them, or just needlessly adding them and making them sound ridiculous. But this is what a top Kremlin official said the other day, that seizing or freezing Russian assets abroad amid the war, adding that it should remember that Russia could reclaim the state of Alaska. Let America always remember there is a part of Russian territory, Alaska. So when they start trying to dispose of our resources abroad, before they do it, let them think we also have something to return. The state of Alaska was once part of Russia, and the latter had previously established several settlements in the area until the United States purchased it in May of 1867 for $7.2 million. Alaska was formally transferred to the U.S. in October of 1867. The purchase marked the end of Russia's efforts to expand trade and settlements in North America. Interesting, right? So the state of Alaska shares close geographic proximity with Russia, where you remember all of those goofy Saturday Night Live skits where they were making fun of Sarah Palin, who said that she could see Russia from her house, which isn't all that far-fetched if you know geography and you understand that this was at one point Russian territory. So here's the truth here. Russia's big Diomede Island and Alaska's little Diomede Island are less than 3 miles apart. So 3 miles separate the two countries. A lot of people don't think in those terms when they think of the United States and Russia. What this is truly all about is that the United States, not only are they technically losing the proxy war in Ukraine, but I think they're beginning to lose the sentiment and the public opinion that they had worked so hard going on late night television, having all of their usual, lackeys in entertainment. I mean, you had rock bands that were doing fundraisers for Ukraine. And people have really kind of digested this notion that, donating to Ukraine is kind of like donating to the Red Cross or something. It's just preposterous that you've got the Azov battalion, who are the most aggressive part of the Ukrainian effort, if you want to call it that, to combat Russia, and the Azov battalion, and we're sending money and weapons to neo-Nazis in Ukraine, and most Americans have no idea. The more people I tell this to, the more they're like, no. And then they go look into it and they go, oh crap, geez, I didn't know there were Nazis in Ukraine. And why are we funding Nazis? And why are we, here's the deal. Why are we doing proxy war? Why are we doing regime change war? We've got humanitarian crises, I don't know, multiple crisis, which is plural, crises. I'm just going to give up on it. You got Somalia, you got Yemen, which continues. And by the way, we're going to go over and buy Saudi Arabian stuff again. We're begging the Saudis for oil because we refuse to get our own oil. Because we're not pumping oil here in the United States, but yet they're pumping more across the rest of the world, that somehow this is going to solve climate change, right? Just insane, because, we can tell everybody, look, the United States, we reduced our greenhouse gases while the rest of the world increased theirs. Germany has fired up the coal plants again because of all of these awesome sanctions on Russia. And, rather than just like eat crow and say, yeah, this was really stupid. We need Russia. We wish they didn't go into you. You could be diplomatic. We wish they didn't go into Ukraine. Maybe tell the world the reason why they went into Ukraine, but nobody will ever do that in the media, not in the Western media anyway. You turn on RT or Sputnik or something for 5 seconds. Well, that's Russian propaganda. Yeah, and they're going to put out their side of the story, if you want to call it propaganda. You don't think the United States is like 95% propaganda right now? Putin's price increase, that's not propaganda. That's way more intense propaganda than anything Russia is putting out right now. When this whole thing started, a lot of people, well, not a lot, but a few people were like, I can't believe you're siding with Putin. And as time has gone on, I feel even more aligned with Putin than I do with any other world leader, because Putin has successfully broken up the liberal New World Order, the one that nobody wanted, right? The one that everybody feared, totalitarianism and authoritarianism, stuff we saw during the lockdowns. See, that's not Russia. Russia is, their own sovereign country, and they're not playing that game. And there are a few other countries like India, obviously China, even though they're authoritarian, but they're still their own sovereign country. Brazil, which might be the only place in South America that is not going to go along with the prevailing New World Order narrative. The United States, I think, overplayed their hand. And the fact that Russia says, hey, we'll just take Alaska back, that's just rhetoric. They're just trying to rile people up here in the States to maybe say, are you paying? I think it's more like, are you guys paying attention to us? You're still not. Okay, well, we're going to talk about taking Alaska back. We could just take it back, and there aren't a lot of people in the news media that take it seriously, number one, because they don't think Russia is serious, but then they didn't think Russia was serious about going to war in Ukraine. And then when they did, holy crap, the world's ending. No, they told you this was what they were going to do, and they did it. This is far different than what we're used to in our own country when it comes to media and when it comes to the government telling us what they're doing, because the government over here doesn't tell anybody what they're doing. They tell people after the fact. You need a FOIA request in order to get the information. So that's my take on the whole, Russia and Alaska thing. I'm probably going to try to get Scott Ritter on again at some point. He's been on fire lately. You should follow him on Telegram, because the videos he does and the information he comes out with and the passion he has for trying to understand people, and he gives a lot of people the benefit of the doubt, but then he explains the reality of the situation. Like when it comes to Zelensky, this guy who's an actor, and he says, not all actors are bad, but, and he talks about Ronald Reagan, obviously, but we've really got to get to what they're saying and what they're doing, and, who is propping them up, who's taking care of them. Right now, it's the United States taking care of Ukraine and those other NATO aligned countries, which are really going to go down the tubes economically. And it's happening in real time. Wait till it gets cold outside in the fall and winter. And then when there's no oil, or there's not enough oil, or oil is a ridiculous price, which again, is this Putin's price increase on its own? In Europe, a lot of it is, but it's not only just the price increase, it's also supply and demand. And that throws everything out of whack. And all of these countries that are trying to be green and responsible are going to lose their minds. Their population is going to rebel in ways I don't think that we've seen. There is far more rebellion, by the way, in these European countries than there is here in the United States. And that's sad, because we're supposed to be the bastion of freedom and liberty, and now we are the bastion of complacency and letting someone else do the thing that we need to do here. So yes, I am hoping for some big turnover in the fall. That is, if the elections go off as they're supposed to. And I still have my concerns of that, but we'll see what happens. You know, a red wave could mean just a fundraising opportunity for Republicans who then sit there on their hands doing nothing to fix the problems that their predecessors 20 years ago started. You know, the George W. Bush Republicans and all of those people, some of the worst people on the planet, because they talk out of both sides of their mouth. They fool people into thinking they're patriotic and they're conservative and they're this and they're that. And they're nothing. They're just part of the apparatus. They're controlled opposition. Again, I'll believe it when I see it. When these people become serious about real change, about getting to the bottom of the deep state, which is a thing. All right, it's still a thing, and it's running the world. The deep state isn't just here in the United States, it's all around the world. And it's called the World Economic Forum, and we can go on and on about all this stuff. But what we need is true reform where, again, the power is decentralized, comes back to the people, comes back to the states. I don't know if there's a political solution to any of this. The more I think about it, the more it's up to you and I to try to forge ahead and just ignore some of the disinformation, or all of it, because none of this is for us. It's all for some weird dystopian future where the rich and the powerful just control everything and everybody. And until we get a handle on it, until we wake up our casual American friends who aren't involved in politics or aren't involved in civics or their own self-determination, those people really are the key to everything. There are a few of us that are very awake, and then are the rest of the population, which is, been lulled to sleep over decades, thanks to technology and prosperity to some degree. That's also been a factor in all of this. All right. So thanks for watching. The bottom line is, I don't think Russia is going to take Alaska. I don't think that's going to happen right away. I do think, though, they're trying to get our attention, and our elites in both media and government are just ignoring them. They're making fun of them. Calling them stooges, right, is not a good look. We've already called Putin a terrorist, a war criminal, yada, yada, yada. And Putin is just forging ahead. And he's doing something that might actually help the world in the long run. And that is to break up this world order, which threatens pretty much everything that free, sovereign people believe in. And that's just my take, and yours might be different, but that's what I got. All right. Talk soon. Hopefully we'll get Scott Ritter back on, and that will be epic, I'm sure. See you soon.